What's up, guys? So, today I want to talk a little bit about some very small news concerning the next NASCAR game. We have an idea of the release date and the name of the game. So, what I'm looking at here is a financial statement for the first quarter for Motorsport Games. Now, you guys hear me. I've actually talked quite a lot about this stuff about these companies and how they release information and who they release it to, right? So this is really for the benefit of shareholders and investors. They want to know what's coming up, quarter by quarter, and not just what the earnings are, but what projects are being worked on. So they have they can make predictions on the stock. So believe it or not, a lot of information, especially when you're looking at video games, it's not just really for video games, but all types of products and all types of companies. But we're just talking about games right now, and a lot of information about video games that are due to come up in the future. A lot of information, people get it from these quarterly statements. They're not really leaks because this is something that Motorsport Games is putting out there, but it really is for the benefit of shareholders. But I'm going to read some of this and then I can dissect, what I get out of it, right? So, shows here Motorsport Games Quarter 1 2021 financial results, NASCAR NXT WEC LM24. So this is Le Mans 24. WEC, I'm not really sure what that is. It's not coming to me right off the bat, but obviously, NASCAR NXT is the next NASCAR game. Now, before I read the rest of this, I caught some shit the last time I talked about this because people said, "Whoa, it's not that's fake information. It's not a real leak." And, they didn't really say I was clickbaiting, but they kind of insinuated it. This is to show you guys that you can get information that's legit that comes from these quarterly statements, but it doesn't always guarantee that it's legit information, but it doesn't it's not something people should look at and just automatically dismiss. The name of the game was something people said, that this is I told you guys it was most likely a placeholder. And there's still a chance it might be a placeholder. There's no guarantee that this is going to remain the name, but they're still calling it NASCAR NXT. It is coming from Motorsports Games. This is a legit statement. So just putting that out there. It turns out that this game most likely is going to be called NASCAR NXT. Don't know what NXT stands for. Maybe it's some weird abbreviation of next. Whatever the case is, um, it wasn't a fake leak. So NASCAR NXT and licensing of the WEC and Le Mans 24 Hours were confirmed in the Motorsports Games first quarter financial results today. I highly suggest reading this type of news as you begin to really appreciate some of the power moves a company like this is making in a space that could easily have been dominated for decades by well established companies. Okay, here are a few selected quotes. Firstly, on NASCAR NXT. NASCAR NXT, the rework of the new NASCAR franchise, is in its final significant development period and will be submitted to platform holders for testing and certification. NASCAR NXT is anticipated to launch in the back half of the third quarter of this year. So, the back half of the third quarter is more or less September, October. Okay? So it's not a firm date, but it's going to be sometime around September, October. So we have a pretty good grasp of when this game is coming. That's really not that far away, and hopefully that means we start getting some good information, maybe gameplay related stuff or just details about the game. That's really what's at the top of my list of what I want to hear about. Le Mans WEC, Le Mans Esports Series joint venture. The company acquired an additional 6% interest in the Le Mans joint venture, which brought the total ownership to 51% and allows the company to consolidate the Le Mans joint venture into its financial results going forward. Additionally, the joint venture entered into license agreements where the joint venture was granted multiple 10-year exclusive licenses to use certain licensed intellectual property related to, themed as, or containing the FIA World Endurance Championship. Okay, that's what that is. The WEC is World Endurance Championship and the 24-hour Le Mans for esports and games. General Stephen Hood, president of Motorsports Games, said, "I'm pleased to announce we're making great progress on the product front, finalizing NASCAR NXT, which we currently anticipate will be available in the back half of the third quarter. Again, most likely September, October. We are also adding new platform opportunities like Nintendo Switch later this year. The integration of our new studios, such as Motorsport Games Australia, that will drive forward the KartCraft product, and Studio 397 with R Factor 2 have been a seamless transition to provide us with new technology, creativity, and expertise. The incredible talent will help us accelerate our forward looking business interests, and together, I believe, we will define the future of virtual motorsports." Okay, so really, let's see. All right, that's pretty much it. So really, the takeaway from this is the game is, I guess, going to be called NASCAR NXT. Again, it could change before the release date. This still might be a placeholder title. I don't think it really matters, but they're still calling it NASCAR NXT, and the release date being somewhere in the vicinity of September or October. So I'm okay with that. I know that they did talk about when they first came along and we knew they were buying out this franchise. They did talk about moving the release dates of these games earlier. But for the first game, I think this is fine. What's more important to me is that by the time this game comes out, we're looking at a 2.5 year minimum of total development time. And I think that's good. I didn't want this to be something that was rushed. And apparently, it's not something that's like a rushed product. So that's really good. And most of the stuff we've heard so far, even though it doesn't get into real detail about the actual game, but on the business front, I like what I'm hearing. I like the moves they're making. These guys, like I've said before, they're not fucking around. They're spending money. They went out and acquired some real heavy hitters in the simulation market. So yeah, I'm not getting carried away. I don't want to, all we saw actually was one screenshot, and it is an early screenshot. So yeah, I don't want to get too carried away, but just from what little we know, I think it's okay to feel positive about where things are headed. So it's that's gonna bring me to the other thing that I want to talk about. I said this early on. These guys do have to, they got to do something to sort of impress me, to keep me around as a consumer, as a supporter of their products. I want to see a fleshed out game. Now, I think I should explain to you guys what I mean by a fully fleshed out game. I think some people may get the impression that I'm expecting these guys to do something revolutionary right out the box. No, that's not what fully fleshed out means. It means that I want to see them check off the basics, right? The things that are supposed to be a part of this game. I want it. I don't want excuses. I want to see them check off everything that's supposed to be there. Make sure it not only is it there, but it works the way it's supposed to work. I don't expect this game to be flawless or perfect. There are going to be some bugs and glitches along the way. That's okay. I'm not talking about game breaking stuff. I'm just saying that the typical things we see, fine. But I want them to understand that there are certain things that are unacceptable. And one thing that you guys have heard me really, I would say if you ask me what's the ultimate thing that I would point to describe the failure of NASCAR games in the past 10 years, what's the one thing I could point at and as an example, right? Obviously there are multiple issues that we've had in the 10 years we've had these games, but if I could point to one thing just as an example, I would have to point to the statistics, the lack of stats. When Utechnics came in the picture and they started making NASCAR games, going back 10 years ago, this crazy trend started where they would release games with no stats. And from the start, I found that to be something that was unbelievable to me, that anybody could develop a sports game and just forget that the importance of having a stat compilation in a sports title. And even if you want to just take the sports aspect out of it, any game that exists has stats. It's just not something that I could see any developer overlook. And to happen one time is a big deal, but to see that year after year, it was something that was just completely neglected. I still to this day, I just don't understand how that something like that can happen. We just started getting stats in NASCAR games 2 years ago, back in 2004. So it hasn't even been that long where it's been a thing again. So that would be the first thing that pops up that I could point to and say, that's unacceptable. And that's something that you look at that and it's just a microcosm of things that, have gone wrong. So when I say I want these guys to check off all the boxes, cross all your T's, dot all your I's, make sure that the things that are supposed to be there, the basics, are there and they work. So, for a NASCAR game, there's the obvious things. The gameplay mechanics, the physics, the AI, um, the handling. That stuff has to work well, has to feel right. And it does seem to me that that's at the top of their priority list, which is a good thing. They seem to be doing the things they need to do to get the right people in place to make sure that um, these things work. The gameplay mechanics are the most important thing. Obviously, that has to work if you really do want this people to take this seriously. So that's obvious, right? Um, but then there are the other things, the details of the career mode. I understand they're not gonna just come out and wow us. It's not gonna be Formula One 2020 with like super deep detail and just content. There is going to be uh, a first stage level of to it. I get it. We're not going to get a paint booth. I would be shocked, but it's okay. As long as we have customization, as long as people don't feel like it's a limited thing where you really don't have a lot of options. There's a lot you can do without a fully fleshed out paint booth. Even with NASCAR Heat, I've said it for the past few years. You don't have to have a fully customizable paint booth like you did with Technics. The system they had in place was fine. It's just that it was limited. They just didn't go deep with it. Even with getting 5 years in, they still only gave you a handful of templates. It's just agonizing how the baby steps every year, it just wasn't enough. So I want to see a little more than what we've gotten. Presentation, again, that's something to me, besides the stats, it's been a huge problem. You got to have presentation in these games, something. At the very least, pre-race, maybe post-race commentary, and off-track presentation. Something has to be going on other than the racing. Okay? Obviously, the racing is the core of the game and the gameplay mechanics. That's great. That has to work, and I'm sure they're focused on that. But what happens off the track when the race is over? What is there to do when you're not at the race on the weekend? In terms of working on these cars and management of these teams. I don't know if we're going to get an ownership thing right off the bat, but you can still make it where the career mode is still well rounded. I don't want to have unrealistic expectations, but I don't think it's unrealistic to have a decent level of presentation. I'm just sick and tired of year after year getting games where there's just no presentation whatsoever. I mean, 704 for them, they just, they gave you these cheesy, cringeworthy, quick little video snippets of drivers talking into their cell phone, sending you messages. That is that's a cop out, actually. Just a cheap cop out. And that does not make up for the lack of presentation. So I am confident these guys are not going to bring that back. We've seen earlier this year scanning. They are actually scanning people, real people. So there's a reason they're doing it, and then my fingers are crossed that it's going to play into some kind of presentation. Again, I'm not expecting the moon and the stars for the first game, but man, I really would like to see something going on that you can be invested in, that you feel like you are a character in this world. These games just can't be jumping in the car, racing, and then off to the next race and nothing happening off track. That's what's that's why presentation is so important, and I want to see something. So again, I'm not expecting anything revolutionary for the first game. Just give us a well-rounded game. Like every other sports game we see has these elements to them. There's no other sports game that has no stats or no presentation. Even games that people are have been complaining about have some presentation in them, like Madden football. I mean, that's been going down the toilet for many years. A lot of people have been complaining. NBA 2K, that people have been complaining for the past few years, and it's not because of lack of presentation or those things. It's microtransactions. It's other things, right? But at the end of the day, if you buy an NBA 2K game, as bad as it is with microtransactions and that stuff, it's a complete game. It's a fully fleshed out product. You play the game, you are living a customized career mode. Things happen off the court after before and after the game. You deal with sponsorships. You deal with contracts. You deal with coaches. You deal with ownership. You deal with um, teammates. and agents. That's still a vital part of the NBA 2K franchise. So, yeah, you can pick it apart that the career mode has kind of fallen off compared to years ago, but it's still light years ahead of anything we've ever seen in a NASCAR game. So, I want to see much more in terms of presentation. And I really do think that's the number one reason these games have always felt so bare bones, because there just isn't any presentation. And we need some of that. And I'm really ecstatic that these guys are pushing the gameplay mechanics to more of a sim. I'm all for that. But you can't forget that at the end of the day, it's still a video game, and video games have other aspects to them to make them complete. It's not just the gameplay. So that's really what I'm expecting and what I want to see. I don't want a bare bones product, and I don't think that's too much to expect. I like what I see in terms of the moves they're making, and yeah, I am sort of, I would say, excited and optimistic without being unrealistic. So I can't wait to get more information from these guys. At some point, they are going to have to reveal the actual announcement of the game and stuff like that, and hopefully get into detail about the career mode, about these details that have been missing from NASCAR games. Yes, we know they want people to see that, hey, the physics and the on track racing is going to be something that is something more realistic or towards that area. That is important. But don't forget, you want people to see that there's more going on. Get people excited that, hey, um, you're actually gonna experience things off track. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say on that front. I want people to kind of understand that when I said I'm expecting a fully fleshed out product, that's what I mean. I just want something that feels complete, that's not missing basic features. Okay? That's it. Everything I've talked about is basic. Nothing I've mentioned is like revolutionary. So, yeah, give us that so that we finally have a game that isn't missing basic features, major things that you're like. Um, so, yeah, those are my thoughts on that. Apparently, it seems like the game's going to be called NASCAR NXT, and the game should be coming out sometime late September to late October, somewhere along that period. They said late third quarter. That's pretty much late third quarter. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. What are you expecting from this game? What what is it that you want to see without making a big list, but or what is it that's gonna make you say I'm done with buying these games in terms of what they release? What are you looking at that you might say, well, if this isn't in the game, I'm done, or uh, yeah, whatever. Let me know what you guys think, and I'm curious to know what's the make or break for you. Those are my thoughts. I look forward to your comments later.